The blood on Owen Everett's knuckles was still warm when he reached for Willa Preston's trembling hand. And in that moment, beneath the lantern-lit rafters of the social hall, both their lives changed forever. The evening had started like any other Saturday night in Carlin, Nevada, a dusty railroad town where the Union Pacific tracks cut through the high desert like a steel promise of civilization. It was August 1883, and the summer heat had finally broken enough that folks felt comfortable gathering at the community hall for the monthly social. Willa had spent the entire week debating whether she would attend. At 22 years old, she had been to enough of these gatherings to know what awaited her. The sidelong glances, the whispered comments, the way young men would look right through her as if she were made of glass. She was not a small woman. Her mother had been built solid, and Willa had inherited that same sturdy frame, broad hips and full figure that strained against even the most carefully tailored dresses. In a world that prized delicate waists and willowy silhouettes, Willa knew she did not fit the mold. But her friend Sarah had insisted, practically dragging her to the dressmaker to have her blue cotton dress let out and pressed. The color brought out her eyes, Sarah had said, those striking gray-blue eyes that could look like storm clouds or clear sky depending on her mood. Now, standing at the entrance of the hall with the fiddle music drifting through the open doors, Willa felt her resolve wavering. She could turn back. No one had seen her yet. She could return to her small room behind her aunt's boarding house and spend the evening with her books and her solitude. "You came." Sarah appeared at her elbow, flushed and pretty in a yellow dress that complemented her dark curls. "I was worried you would change your mind. Come on, they are about to start the Virginia reel." Before Willa could protest, Sarah had linked their arms and pulled her into the warm chaos of the social hall. The space had been transformed since Willa had last seen it. Paper lanterns hung from the exposed beam ceiling, casting a golden glow over the assembled crowd. The women wore their finest dresses, hair pinned up in elaborate arrangements. The men had slicked back their hair and donned their cleanest shirts, though most still wore their work boots, scuffed and dusty from long days in the mines or on the ranches that dotted the surrounding valleys. Willa found a seat along the wall where the unmarried women and the older matrons congregated. She smoothed her skirts and tried to make herself as small as possible, which was a futile endeavor given her size. Across the room, she could see the young men clustered near the refreshment table, passing a flask between them when they thought no one was looking. The music started, and couples began forming lines down the center of the hall. Sarah was swept away by a young clerk from the telegraph office, leaving Willa alone. She watched the dancers with a mixture of longing and resignation. She had always loved to dance. As a girl, before she had grown into her current proportions, her father would put on music in their parlor and teach her the steps, spinning her around until she was dizzy with laughter. But those days were long gone. Her father had died when she was 16, a mining accident that had left her mother a widow and Willa an only child trying to help make ends meet. They had moved to Carlin 2 years ago when her mother's sister offered them a place to stay. Her mother had passed last winter from pneumonia, leaving Willa truly alone except for her aunt, who ran the boarding house with an iron fist and a suspicious nature. Look at her, sitting there like a sack of flour. The words cut through Willa's thoughts like a blade. She did not need to turn her head to know who had spoken. Garrett Monroe, the son of the wealthiest ranch owner in the county, stood with a cluster of his friends near the wall. He was handsome in that clean-cut way that some women found irresistible, with blonde hair and a confident swagger that came from never wanting for anything. "Maybe she is hoping someone will mistake her for a chair," one of his companions added, and they all laughed. Willa felt heat rise in her cheeks. She kept her eyes fixed on the dancers, willing herself not to cry. She would not give them the satisfaction. "I heard old man Peterson's draft horse is looking for a mate," Garrett continued, his voice deliberately loud enough to carry. "Might be a good match. Similar builds, you know." More laughter. Willa's hands clenched in her lap, her fingernails digging into her palms. She should leave. She should stand up and walk out with her head held high. But her legs felt like lead and she could not seem to make herself move. "That is enough." The new voice was quiet, but carried an edge of steel that cut through the laughter like a knife. Willa looked up and saw a man she did not recognize stepping away from the shadows near the door. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell nearly to his collar, and a few days' worth of stubble darkening his jaw. He wore dusty trail clothes, denim trousers and a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned, muscular forearms. A battered hat hung down his back by a leather cord. "Who the hell are you?" Garrett demanded, his smile fading. "Someone who does not appreciate bullies," the stranger said. He moved closer, and Willa noticed he walked with the easy confidence of a man comfortable with violence. There was something dangerous in his dark eyes, something that made Garrett and his friends shift uncomfortably. "This is none of your business, Drifter," Garrett said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "I am making it my business." The stranger stopped directly in front of Garrett, close enough that the young man had to tilt his head back slightly to meet his gaze. "You are going to apologize to the lady." "Like hell I will," Garrett sputtered. "Who do you think you are, coming in here and telling me what to do?" "My father owns half this county." "Then your father raised a fool." The stranger's voice remained calm, almost conversational. "Apologize." The music had stopped. Willa realized the entire hall had gone silent, everyone watching the confrontation. She wanted to sink through the floor. This was worse than being mocked. Now she was the center of attention, the cause of a scene. "You want an apology?" Garrett's face had gone red. "Fine. I apologize that you have such poor taste in women. That fat cow is not worth defending." The punch came so fast Willa almost missed it. One moment Garrett was smirking, the next he was on the floor with blood streaming from his nose, his friends backing away with their hands raised. The stranger stood over him, his right hand still clenched in a fist. "Anyone else have something to say?" he asked quietly, his gaze sweeping the room. No one spoke. Even the fiddle player seemed frozen, his bow hovering over the strings. The stranger turned and walked directly to where Willa sat. She looked up at him, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Up close, she could see his eyes were a deep brown, almost black in the lantern light. There was a scar along his left cheekbone, thin and white with age. He held out his hand. "Would you do me the honor of a dance, miss?" Willa stared at him, unable to form words. This had to be a joke, an extension of the mockery, but his expression was serious, almost gentle, with no trace of cruelty or amusement. "I do not dance," she finally managed to say. "Neither do I, usually," he replied, "but I would like to make an exception tonight if you are willing." She looked at his outstretched hand, rough and calloused from hard work. Behind him, Garrett was being helped to his feet by his friends, holding a handkerchief to his bleeding nose. The rest of the crowd still watched in silence. Willa made a decision. She placed her hand in his and let him pull her to her feet. His grip was warm and firm, and he led her to the center of the floor as if she were a queen, and this were a palace ballroom instead of a dusty social hall in a Nevada railroad town. The fiddle player, recovering from his shock, began a slow waltz. The stranger placed one hand respectfully on Willa's waist and took her other hand in his. He was a good dancer, she realized with surprise, leading her through the steps with practiced ease. "What is your name?" he asked as they turned. "Willa Preston," she said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, breathless and uncertain. "Owen Everett." He smiled, and the expression transformed his face, softening the hard edges. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Preston." "You did not have to do that," Willa said. "Hit him, I mean. I am used to it." "That does not make it right." Owen's expression darkened. "Men like that think they can say whatever they want without consequences. Someone needed to teach him different. You might have made an enemy. His father is powerful around here." "I have had worse enemies." He spun her gently, and she felt her skirts flare out. "Besides, I am not planning to stay in Carlin long." Something in her chest tightened at those words. Of course he was not staying. He was a drifter, just as Garrett had said. He would move on, and she would be left here with the consequences of tonight. But for now, she was dancing. The other couples had gradually joined them on the floor, the social resuming its normal rhythm as the shock of the violence faded. Willa caught Sarah's eye across the room and saw her friend grinning broadly, giving her an enthusiastic thumbs up. "You are a good dancer," Owen said. "So are you. Where did a cowboy learn to waltz?" "Who said I was a cowboy?" Willa looked at him more carefully, taking in the gun belt he wore low on his hip, the confident way he carried himself. "What are you then?" "A little bit of everything. I have worked cattle, broken horses, done some mining, whatever pays." He paused. "I was heading through to California when my horse threw a shoe. Figured I would stay in Carlin a few days while the blacksmith fixes her up." "And you decided to spend your evening at a social." "I was hungry. Someone told me there would be food." He glanced toward the refreshment table laden with pies and cakes. "I did not expect entertainment." Despite herself, Willa smiled. "Is that what you call knocking a man down?" "I call that justice. The entertainment is getting to dance with a beautiful woman." Willa's smile faded. "You do not need to say things like that." "Why not if they are true?" "Because they are not true, and we both know it." She tried to pull away, but he held her hand firmly. "Has anyone ever told you that you have remarkable eyes?" Owen asked. "Like a storm coming in over the mountains." "Stop it," Willa said, more sharply than she intended. "I do not need your pity." "It is not pity." His voice was serious now. "Do you want to know what I saw when I walked in here tonight? I saw a room full of people dancing and laughing, and I saw you sitting alone with sadness in your eyes. Then I heard that fool and his friends mocking you for no reason except their own cruelty. And I saw a woman who did not deserve any of it. You do not know anything about me. Then tell me. We have all night." The waltz ended, but instead of releasing her, Owen simply waited as the fiddle player started another tune. It was a faster song this time, a lively reel that had couples spinning and laughing. Owen adjusted his grip and launched them into the dance with such enthusiasm that Willa found herself laughing despite her confusion and lingering hurt. They danced through the next song, and the next. When Willa protested that she needed to rest, Owen fetched her a cup of punch, and they stood together near the open door where a slight breeze offered relief from the heat of the crowded room. She learned that he was 26, originally from Texas, and had been on his own since he was 16. He did not talk much about his family, and she did not press. The West was full of people running from something. She told him about her own life, her parents, her work helping her aunt at the boarding house. It felt strange to talk so openly with someone she had just met, but Owen listened with genuine interest, asking questions and remembering details in a way that made her feel truly heard. "Would you like to take a walk?" Owen asked when the hall grew too warm and crowded. "Get some fresh air." Willa hesitated. Unmarried women did not go walking alone with men they had just met. But tonight had already broken so many rules. What was one more? "All right," she said. They stepped out into the cool desert night. The stars blazed overhead in stunning profusion, the Milky Way a river of light across the black sky. Carlin was mostly dark except for the lights from the social hall and a few oil lamps burning in windows. The town consisted of a main street with a handful of businesses, a scattering of houses, and the imposing presence of the railroad depot. Beyond that stretched the vast emptiness of the Nevada desert, sagebrush and sand as far as the eye could see. They walked slowly down the dusty street, their footsteps quiet in the darkness. Owen kept a respectful distance, his hands clasped behind his back. "You like it here?" he asked. "In Carlin," Willa considered the question. "I do not know if like is the right word. It is where I am. My aunt gave me a place when I had nowhere else to go. That is not the same as liking it." "No," she admitted, "it is not, but beggars cannot be choosers. You are not a beggar." Owen stopped walking and turned to face her. "You are a young woman with her whole life ahead of her. You should not settle for a place where people treat you badly." "And what should I do instead? I have no money, no prospects. I am lucky to have a roof over my head and food to eat. You could leave. Go somewhere new, start over." "With what?" "It takes money to travel, money to survive while you look for work. And even if I could manage it, where would I go? Other towns are not going to be any different." Owen was quiet for a long moment. "You are probably right," he said finally. "People can be cruel anywhere. But at least you would have the choice. At least you would be living on your own terms." They resumed walking, following the road that led out of town toward the open desert. The music from the social hall faded behind them, replaced by the sound of crickets and the distant howl of a coyote. "Can I ask you something?" Willa said. "Anything. Why did you really defend me? You do not know me, you are not staying here. It would have been easier to just ignore what was happening." Owen was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and rough. "I had a sister, Mary. She was sweet and kind and laughed at everything, but she was born with a twisted foot and she walked with a limp. Kids used to mock her, call her names. I tried to protect her, but I was young and small and there was only so much I could do." "What happened to her?" Willa asked gently. "She died when she was 14. Fever took her one winter. I was 18, already working as a ranch hand. By the time I got word and made it home, she was already gone." He paused. "I swore then that I would never stand by and watch someone be hurt because they are different, because they do not fit what other people think they should be." Willa felt tears prick her eyes. "I am sorry about your sister." "Me too." Owen looked up at the stars. "She would have liked you. She always said the meanest people were the ones who did not know what real hardship was. That suffering either makes you cruel or kind, and she chose kind. She sounds like she was a wonderful person." "She was the best person I ever knew." They stood together in the darkness, two people bound by loneliness and the scars of loss. Willa felt something shift inside her, a crack in the walls she had built around her heart. "We should probably head back," she said softly. "People will talk." "Let them talk." But Owen turned and they began walking back toward town. "Will you save me another dance? You want to dance more? Your feet must be tired." "Not remotely," he grinned at her. "Besides, I am not done keeping my promise." "What promise?" "To dance with you all night." And he did. When they returned to the social hall, Owen claimed every dance until the fiddle player's fingers grew tired and the paper lanterns began to burn low. They danced until Willa's feet ached and her cheeks hurt from smiling. They danced until the other couples began drifting home and the refreshment table was picked clean. Garrett Monroe and his friends had left hours ago, and Willa found she did not care. For one night, she was not the fat girl that everyone mocked. She was just a woman dancing with a handsome man who looked at her like she was the only person in the room. When the evening finally ended and people began gathering their things, Sarah rushed over with barely contained excitement. "Willa Preston, you have been holding out on me," she said, her eyes dancing. "Who is he? Where did he come from? Are you going to see him again?" "Slow down," Willa laughed. "His name is Owen Everett. He is just passing through town." Sarah's face fell. "Oh, that is too bad. He seems wonderful." "He is," Willa agreed. She glanced over to where Owen was talking with the fiddle player, probably thanking him for the music. "But some things are not meant to last." "That does not mean they are not worth having," Sarah said wisely. She squeezed Willa's hand. "I am glad you came tonight. I am glad you were happy, even if just for a little while." Owen walked Willa back to her aunt's boarding house, their pace slow despite the late hour. They did not talk much, both lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the front steps, Willa turned to face him. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. Tonight was more than I could have hoped for. The pleasure was mine." Owen tipped his hat. "Sleep well, Miss Preston. You too, Mr. Everett." She climbed the steps to the door, expecting him to walk away. But when she looked back, he was still standing there, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "Will I see you tomorrow?" he called softly. "I have church in the morning, then I help my aunt with Sunday dinner for the boarders. What about after?" "I usually have Sunday afternoons free." "Would you like to go riding? I could borrow a horse from the livery." Willa's heart leapt. "I would like that." 2 o'clock then. "I will come by to collect you." She nodded and slipped inside before her aunt could appear and start asking questions. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling and replaying every moment of the evening, Willa knew that sleep would be a long time coming. Sunday morning dawned clear and hot. Willa sat through the service at the small white church on the edge of town, barely hearing a word the preacher said. Her mind kept drifting back to the feel of Owen's hand in hers, the warmth of his smile, the way he had looked at her like she mattered. After church, she helped her aunt prepare a massive Sunday dinner for the 8 men who boarded at the house. There was roast chicken and potatoes, fresh bread and green beans from the garden. Willa worked mechanically, peeling and chopping and stirring while her aunt bustled around barking orders. "You are distracted today," Aunt Meredith observed. She was a thin, sharp-featured woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Did something happen at the social?" "No, madam," Willa lied. "Just tired," her aunt sniffed. "Young people these days do not know the meaning of hard work. In my day, we did not waste time with frivolous gatherings." Willa held her tongue. Her aunt liked to complain, but she had a good heart beneath her prickly exterior. When Willa had nowhere else to go, Aunt Meredith had taken her in and given her work. That counted for something, even if their relationship was more employer and employee than family. Finally, the dishes were washed and put away, the kitchen cleaned to Aunt Meredith's exacting standards. Willa changed out of her work dress into a simple green skirt and white blouse, practical clothes suitable for riding. She plaited her hair in a single braid down her back and pinched her cheeks to bring some color to them. At precisely 2 o'clock, there was a knock at the front door. Willa rushed to answer it before her aunt could intercept, grabbing her bonnet as she went. Owen stood on the porch, looking remarkably well-groomed compared to the night before. He had shaved and changed into clean clothes, and his dark hair was still damp, as if he had dunked his head in the horse trough. "Ready?" he asked. "Very ready." They walked to the livery stable where Owen had arranged for 2 horses, a gentle mare for Willa and a rangy gelding for himself. The stable owner, a grizzled old man named Pete, helped Willa into the saddle with a knowing look that made her blush. "You two have a nice ride now," Pete said. "There is a pretty spot about 3 miles out, near that cluster of cottonwoods by the creek. Good place for a picnic, if you get my meaning." "Thank you kindly," Owen said, unruffled by the implication. He swung easily into his own saddle and they rode out of town at an easy walk. Willa had not been on a horse in years, but the mare was indeed gentle, responding to the lightest touch of the reins. As they left Carlin behind, Willa felt the tension drain from her shoulders. Out here in the open desert with the sun on her face and the wind in her hair, she could forget about cruel comments and judging eyes. She could just be herself. "You ride well," Owen observed. "My father taught me when I was young. We had a small farm in Missouri before we moved west. I used to ride everywhere." She patted the mare's neck. "I had forgotten how much I missed it." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, following a dirt track that wound through the sagebrush. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and hazy in the afternoon heat. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. True to Pete's word, they found a small creek shaded by a grove of cottonwood trees about 3 miles from town. The water sparkled over smooth stones, and the trees provided welcome relief from the sun. Owen dismounted and helped Willa down, his hands strong and steady on her waist. "This is beautiful," Willa said, walking to the edge of the creek. She crouched down and trailed her fingers through the cool water. "I did some scouting this morning," Owen admitted. "Wanted to make sure I found somewhere nice. You planned ahead." Willa looked up at him with surprise. "I am capable of thinking about the future on occasion," he grinned, "even if I do not always act like it." They sat in the shade of the cottonwoods, and Owen produced a small bundle from his saddlebag containing bread and cheese and a few apples. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing easily. Willa found herself telling him things she had never told anyone, about her dreams of seeing the ocean someday, her love of reading, her secret hope that there might be more to life than cooking and cleaning for her aunt's boarders. Owen talked about his years of drifting, the places he had been and the work he had done. He had cowboyed in Texas, mined silver in Colorado, worked on a cattle drive from Montana to Wyoming. He spoke matter-of-factly about danger and hardship, close calls with rustlers and storms and stampedes. "Do you ever get lonely?" Willa asked. "Always moving, never putting down roots." Owen considered the question. "Sometimes, but I have always figured it is better to be lonely and free than trapped and miserable." "Are those the only two choices?" "I do not know, maybe not." He looked at her intently. "What about you? Are you lonely?" Willa thought about lying, putting on a brave face, but something about Owen's directness demanded honesty. "Yes," she said quietly. "I am lonely most of the time. I have my aunt and my friend Sarah, but it is not the same as having someone who really knows you, someone who chooses to be with you." "Why have not you married, found someone here in Carlin?" "Because no one wants someone like me." The words came out more bitter than she intended. "I am too fat, too plain, too poor. I have nothing to offer." "That is bullshit." Owen's blunt response startled her. "Pardon my language, but it is. You are kind and smart and brave enough to face down a room full of people who treat you badly. You have a beautiful laugh and eyes that could stop a man's heart. Any man would be lucky to have you. Then why have not any of them figured that out?" Willa felt tears threatening. "I am 22 years old. I should be married with babies by now. Instead, I am spending my life taking care of other people's messes and sleeping in a tiny room that used to be a storage closet. Maybe you have not met the right person yet, or maybe there is no right person for me." She dashed at her eyes angrily. "I am sorry. This is not how I wanted today to go. You have been so kind, and here I am feeling sorry for myself." Owen reached over and took her hand. "You are allowed to feel sorry for yourself sometimes. Life has not been fair to you. Life is not fair to anyone. True. But that does not mean we should not fight for something better." He squeezed her hand gently. "Come with me. What, where? To California, or wherever I end up going next. Come with me. Willa stared at him in shock. You cannot be serious. Why not? You said yourself that you are not happy here. You want to see more of the world, so come see it. Owen, we just met. I cannot just run off with a stranger. I know it seems crazy, but sometimes the best things in life are the crazy ones. He moved closer, his dark eyes intense. I like you, Willa. More than I have liked anyone in a very long time. I think we could have something good together if you are willing to take a chance. Willa's heart was pounding. A huge part of her wanted to say yes, to throw caution to the wind and ride off into the sunset like the heroes in her novels. But the practical part of her, the part that had learned through hard experience that fairy tales did not come true, held her back. I need time to think, she said. This is too much, too fast. Owen nodded, though she could see disappointment flicker across his face. Of course, I understand. I did not mean to pressure you. You are not. I just need to think. They stayed by the creek a while longer, but the easy mood from earlier had been broken. The ride back to town was quiet, both of them lost in thought. When they reached the boarding house, Owen helped her dismount. Can I see you again? He asked. I have at least a few more days in town while the blacksmith finishes with my horse. Yes, Willa said. I would like that. He smiled and some of the tension eased. Tomorrow then. Same time. Tomorrow. Willa watched him ride away, her emotions in turmoil. Part of her wanted to run after him to tell him yes, she would go anywhere with him, but fear held her rooted in place. Fear of the unknown, fear of making a mistake, fear of getting hurt. She went inside and climbed the narrow stairs to her small room. It was barely large enough for a single bed and a small chest of drawers, with one tiny window that looked out onto the alley. Her whole life fit in this room. A few dresses, some books, a photograph of her parents on their wedding day. Was this all she wanted? Was this all she deserved? The next few days fell into a pattern. Owen would call for her in the afternoons, and they would ride out into the desert or walk through town. He bought her lemonade at the general store and listened with apparent fascination as she told him about the books she had read. They talked about everything and nothing, building a foundation of friendship alongside the attraction that crackled between them. On the third day, they were sitting on the steps of the church, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink when Owen took her hand. I spoke to the blacksmith today, he said. My horse will be ready tomorrow. Willa felt her stomach drop. She had known this was coming, but somehow she had managed to push it to the back of her mind. So you will be leaving. That depends on you. He turned to face her fully. Come with me, Willa. I know it is fast. I know it is scary. But I have never felt like this about anyone, and I do not want to lose you. Owen, I cannot just leave everything. What exactly are you leaving? A job you do not love, a town where people mock you, an aunt who treats you like hired help. His voice was gentle but urgent. You told me you wanted more from life. This is your chance to take it. And what would we do? How would we live? The same way I have been living. We will find work wherever we go. I am good with horses and cattle. You can cook and clean. We will figure it out together. But we are not married. People will talk. Then we will get married. Owen said it as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Right now, if you want, the preacher here in town can do it. Willa felt dizzy. You are proposing to me, I suppose I am. He smiled. I do not have a ring or fancy words, but I can promise you that I will never mock you or make you feel less than you are. I can promise that every day with me will be an adventure, and I can promise that I will do everything in my power to make you happy. That is crazy, Willa whispered. Maybe. But is it any crazier than spending the rest of your life in a storage closet, waiting for something that will never come? Willa looked out at the desert, vast and empty and full of possibility. She thought about her tiny room, her demanding aunt, the pitying looks from townspeople who saw her as a spinster in the making. She thought about dancing in Owen's arms, feeling beautiful and wanted for the first time in years. "When would we leave?" she asked. Owen's face lit up. "Is that a yes?" "I think it might be." Willa felt a smile tugging at her lips despite her nervousness. "I must be insane. You are brave." Owen stood and pulled her to her feet. "We can leave tomorrow afternoon. That will give you time to gather your things and say goodbye." "We should get married first," Willa said. "I know you said people will talk anyway, but I would rather do this properly." "Then we will get married in the morning. I will go talk to the preacher right now, make arrangements." He cupped her face in his hands. "You will not regret this, Willa." "I swear it." "I hope not," she said. Then, feeling bold, she leaned in and kissed him. It was her first kiss, soft and sweet and full of promise. Owen's arms came around her, holding her close, and for a moment the whole world fell away. There was just the two of them, bound together by choice and hope, and the wild courage of people with nothing left to lose. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. Owen rested his forehead against hers. "That was worth waiting for," he murmured. Willa laughed, giddy with the enormity of what she had just agreed to. "Go talk to the preacher. I need to figure out how to tell my aunt I am leaving." That conversation, which happened an hour later after Willa had worked up her courage, went about as well as could be expected. "You are what?" Aunt Meredith dropped the plate she was drying. It clattered onto the counter but did not break. "Have you lost your mind? I am getting married tomorrow morning, and then Owen and I are leaving Carlin." Willa forced herself to stand straight to meet her aunt's shocked gaze. "I wanted you to know, and to thank you for everything you have done for me." "Thank me? You are throwing away a steady home and good work to run off with some drifter you have known for less than a week." Aunt Meredith's face had gone red. "Your mother would be ashamed." That stung, but Willa kept her composure. "My mother wanted me to be happy. She told me before she died that I should not waste my life being afraid. There is a difference between courage and foolishness, girl. This man could be anyone. He could be a criminal, a charlatan. He could use you and abandon you in the first town you come to. He could. But I do not believe he will." Willa moved closer. "Aunt Meredith, I know you care about me. I know you are worried, but I need to do this. I need to take a chance on something, on someone. I cannot keep living half a life." Her aunt's anger seemed to deflate. She sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly looking old and tired. "You are all I have left of your mother," she said quietly. "What if something happens to you? Then at least I will have lived first." Willa knelt beside her aunt's chair. "I will write to you. I will let you know where we are, that I am all right. See that you do." Aunt Meredith reached out and touched Willa's cheek, a rare gesture of affection. "You are a good girl. You deserve happiness. I just hope this man can give it to you." "So do I," Willa admitted. She spent that evening packing her few belongings into a worn carpetbag. It did not take long. She had so little. As she folded her dresses and wrapped her mother's photograph in a spare petticoat for protection, reality began to set in. Tomorrow she would be married. Tomorrow she would leave the only home she had known for the past 2 years. Tomorrow her entire life would change. She barely slept. Every creak of the old house made her heart race. What if Owen changed his mind? What if she was making a terrible mistake? But beneath the fear was something else. Excitement. Hope. The thrilling sense that she was finally taking control of her own destiny. Morning came with brilliant sunshine. Willa dressed in her best dress, the blue one she had worn to the social, and used the last of her money to buy a small bouquet of wildflowers from a girl selling them on the street corner. Her hands shook as she pinned up her hair. Owen was waiting for her at the church, looking nervous and handsome in a clean shirt and vest. Sarah was there too, having somehow heard the news already. In a town as small as Carlin, gossip spread faster than wildfire. "I cannot believe you are doing this," Sarah said, hugging Willa tightly. "But I am so happy for you. You deserve this." "Will you stand with me?" Willa asked. "I need a witness." "Of course." Sarah wiped at her eyes. "I am going to miss you so much." The ceremony was simple and quick. The preacher, a kind-faced man named Reverend Walsh, read the traditional vows. Owen's voice was steady as he promised to love and cherish her. Willa's voice shook but held as she made the same promises back. They had no rings, so the preacher tied a piece of red ribbon around their joined hands to symbolize their union. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Owen pulled Willa close and kissed her thoroughly, to the point that Reverend Walsh cleared his throat meaningfully. Sarah clapped and cheered. Aunt Meredith, who had come at the last minute despite her reservations, dabbed at her eyes with her handkerchief. And just like that, Willa Preston became Willa Everett. They had a quick meal at the boarding house, Aunt Meredith's way of saying goodbye. She had cooked all of Willa's favorite foods, and the table was laden with fried chicken and biscuits and apple pie. The boarders offered their congratulations, some sincere, some skeptical. Pete from the livery stable showed up with 2 horses as a wedding gift, refusing to accept payment. "You take care of her," Pete told Owen sternly, "or you will answer to me." "I will protect her with my life," Owen promised. By early afternoon, they were ready to leave. Willa's carpetbag was secured behind her saddle. Owen had his own gear packed on his horse, along with supplies for the journey. The plan was to head west toward California, finding work along the way. The farewells were tearful. Sarah made Willa promise to write. Aunt Meredith pressed a small leather pouch into her hands. "There is $50 in there," her aunt said. "It is not much, but it is what I can spare for emergencies." "Aunt Meredith, I cannot take your money." "Yes, you can. Consider it your inheritance." The older woman hugged her stiffly. "Be careful, be smart, and be happy." "I will try to be all 3, Willa promised. Then she and Owen were riding out of Carlin, heading west toward the mountains. Willa looked back once and saw Sarah waving frantically, her yellow dress bright in the sunshine. Then the town disappeared behind a rise, and Willa faced forward, toward the unknown future that awaited them. They rode for hours through the high desert, following old wagon tracks. The landscape was stark and beautiful, all sagebrush and rocky outcrops beneath an endless blue sky. They did not talk much, saving their energy for the ride. But occasionally, Owen would glance over at her and smile, and Willa would feel her heart skip. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, they found a sheltered spot among some boulders to make camp. Owen unsaddled the horses and hobbled them where they could graze on the sparse grass. Willa gathered dried brush for a fire, glad for the practical skills her hard life had taught her. They ate a simple dinner of beans and hardtack, washed down with water from their canteens. The fire crackled cheerfully, pushing back the darkness. Above them, the stars began to appear one by one, until the entire sky was ablaze with light. "You regret it?" Owen asked. He sat close enough that their shoulders touched. "Marrying me, leaving everything behind?" Willa considered the question honestly. She was scared, yes, uncertain about what lay ahead, but regret. "No," she said. "I do not regret it. I am terrified, but I do not regret it." "Good, because I have something to confess." Owen looked nervous. "I have never been married before. I have no idea what I am doing." Despite her own nervousness, Willa laughed. "Neither do I. I suppose we will figure it out together." "Together," Owen agreed. He took her hand. "That is a word I could get used to." That night, in the tent Owen had pitched against the cold desert air, they came together as husband and wife. It was awkward and tender, both of them fumbling through inexperience to find each other. But there was love in it, and gentleness, and the promise of better things to come. Afterward, lying in Owen's arms with the sound of coyotes singing in the distance, Willa felt more at peace than she had in years. Whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together. They traveled west for 3 weeks, following old trails and newer railroad lines. They passed through small mining towns and vast stretches of empty land. They slept under the stars more often than not, learning each other's habits and quirks. Owen sang off-key while he cooked breakfast. Willa talked in her sleep. They bickered about which route to take and made up with kisses that left them both breathless. In a town called Elko, they found work at a ranch. The owner needed help with the fall roundup, and Owen's skill with horses and cattle quickly proved invaluable. Willa helped the ranch owner's wife with cooking and preserving for the winter months ahead. They stayed for 6 weeks, sleeping in the bunkhouse and saving every penny they could. Owen was gentle with her, patient as she learned her way around the physical aspects of their marriage. But there was passion too, a fierce attraction that left them sneaking away whenever they could find privacy. Willa discovered that her body, the body she had been taught to be ashamed of, could be a source of pleasure and joy in the right hands. Owen worshipped her with touch and words, mapping every curve and freckle as if she were something precious. "You are so beautiful," he would whisper against her skin, and Willa was learning to believe him. From Elko they moved on to Winnemucca, then to Lovelock. Winter was coming, and they needed to get through the mountains before the passes closed. But in Lovelock, they heard about a small ranch for sale outside a town called Fernley, closer to Reno. The owner had died with no heirs, and the property was going cheap. "We could buy it," Owen said one night as they discussed their future. They had saved nearly $300 between wages and the money from Aunt Meredith. "It is small, just a few acres with a house and barn, but it would be ours. We could build something there. You want to stop drifting?" Willa asked. "I thought you liked moving around." "I like it less now that I have you." Owen pulled her close. "Before, I had nothing to lose, nothing tying me down, but now I want something different. I want a home. I want to build a life with you, put down roots. Are you sure? You have only known me a few months. The best few months of my life." He kissed her forehead. "What do you think? Should we take a look at this ranch?" They rode to Fernley the next day. The town was small but growing, situated near the Truckee River with good water and decent grazing land. The ranch was 3 miles outside town, a modest spread with 40 acres, a small house that needed work, and a barn that had seen better days. But the well was good, and there was a creek running through the property. "We could make this work," Owen said, his eyes alight with possibility. "Fix up the house, repair the barn, run some cattle, maybe breed horses." Willa looked at the little house with its sagging porch and broken windows. She saw past the disrepair to what it could be. A home. Their home. A place where they belonged. "Let's do it," she said. They bought the ranch for $200, leaving them $100 for supplies and repairs. The next few months were the hardest work of Willa's life, but also the most satisfying. They replaced the roof, fixed the windows, whitewashed the walls inside and out. Owen rebuilt the porch while Willa planted a vegetable garden. They bought 3 young heifers and a bull, the start of what they hoped would become a larger herd. Word spread that the Everetts were good people to work for and do business with. Owen took jobs breaking horses for neighboring ranches, developing a reputation as a skilled horseman. Willa sold eggs and vegetables in town, her baked goods becoming popular with the local restaurant. Slowly, carefully, they built a life. That first winter in the house was cold but joyful. They huddled together for warmth and talked late into the night about their dreams. Owen wanted to breed the finest horses in Nevada. Willa wanted to save enough money to buy books and start a lending library. They were simple dreams, but they were theirs. Spring came with a rush of green across the desert. The creeks swelled with snowmelt, and wildflowers carpeted the hills. Willa realized she had missed her monthly courses and felt sick every morning. At first, she thought it was something she ate, but when the symptoms continued, the truth became obvious. "I think I am pregnant," she told Owen one evening as they sat on their newly repaired porch watching the sunset. Owen's face went through a series of expressions: shock, joy, fear, and finally determination. "Are you sure?" "Pretty sure. I have missed 2 months now and I am sick every morning." "How do you feel about it?" he asked carefully. Willa put a hand on her still flat stomach. "Terrified, happy, excited, all of it at once." Owen pulled her close. "We are going to be parents," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" "I am terrified too, but yes, I am happy." He kissed her. "We will figure it out, just like we figured out everything else." The pregnancy was not easy. Willa was sick for months, barely able to keep food down. But Owen was endlessly patient, bringing her weak tea and dry toast, rubbing her feet when they swelled. As her belly grew, he took on more and more of the physical work, refusing to let her do anything he deemed too strenuous. "I am pregnant, not an invalid," she protested. "I know. But indulge me. Let me take care of you." The baby came in late October after a long and difficult labor. The midwife from town, a capable woman named Mrs. Chen, coached Willa through it while Owen paced outside, looking pale and terrified. Finally, as dawn broke over the mountains, a baby's cry pierced the air. Mrs. Chen emerged from the bedroom with a smile. "You have a son," she announced. "A big, healthy boy. Your wife is tired but doing well." Owen rushed inside to find Willa propped up against the pillows, looking exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a squalling infant with a shock of dark hair. "Meet your son," Willa said softly. Owen sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at the tiny, red-faced creature. "He is perfect," he whispered. "You are perfect. Thank you." They named him James after Owen's father. Little James was a demanding baby, crying frequently and sleeping poorly. But Willa fell in love with him the moment she held him, this little person who was half her and half Owen. Watching Owen with their son was equally amazing. The rough cowboy transformed into a gentle father, singing lullabies in his off-key voice and walking the floor with James for hours when the baby would not settle. The first years of James's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and hard work. The ranch slowly prospered. They increased their herd to 20 cattle and started breeding horses, with Owen developing a line of sturdy, gentle mounts perfect for ranch work. Willa's garden flourished, and she started selling preserves and pickles in addition to her baked goods. When James was 2, they learned another baby was on the way. This time the pregnancy was easier, and Willa gave birth to a daughter they named Ruth, after Willa's mother. Ruth was a calmer baby than James had been, content to sleep and eat and observe the world with serious gray-blue eyes just like her mother's. Life fell into a rhythm. Owen would work the ranch during the day while Willa cared for the children and the house. In the evenings, they would sit together on the porch, watching James and Ruth play while the sun set over the mountains. These were the moments Willa treasured most, the ordinary, everyday magic of a life she had built with someone she loved. The town of Fernley grew around them. More families moved in, drawn by the railroad and the promise of opportunity. A proper school was built, and James started attending when he turned 6. He was bright and curious, constantly asking questions about everything he saw. Ruth was quieter, but she had her mother's love of stories and would sit for hours looking at picture books. One Saturday, nearly 8 years after they had left Carlin, Owen suggested they go to the town social. Fernley held them monthly now, proper events with hired musicians and refreshments. Willa had been to a few over the years but usually left early, uncomfortable with the crowds and noise. "Come on," Owen coaxed. "We deserve a night out. Mrs. Chen already agreed to watch the kids." "I do not know," Willa said. "I have nothing nice to wear. You look beautiful in anything." Owen pulled her close. "Besides, I want to dance with my wife. It has been too long." They left the children with Mrs. Chen and rode into town as the sun was setting. The social hall was full of light and music, couples already forming up for a reel. Willa felt the old anxiety rise up, the voice in her head that said she did not belong, that people were judging her. But then, Owen took her hand and led her onto the floor, and suddenly none of it mattered. They danced 3 dances in a row, laughing and spinning like they had that first night in Carlin. Willa was older now, and motherhood had changed her body even more. But in Owen's arms she felt beautiful. During a break in the music, a woman approached them. It took Willa a moment to recognize Sarah, her friend from Carlin. Sarah was fuller in the face now, with the settled look of a married woman. "Willa, is it really you?" Sarah grabbed her in an enthusiastic hug. "I cannot believe it. What are you doing in Fernley?" "We live here," Willa said, returning the hug. "We have a ranch just outside town. What about you?" "My husband got transferred here to manage the bank. We have been here 6 months. I have been hoping I would run into you." Sarah looked between Willa and Owen. "You look so happy, both of you." "We are," Willa said simply. "Very happy." They talked for a few more minutes, catching up on the years that had passed. Sarah had 3 children now, all girls. She promised to visit the ranch soon so their children could play together. When she moved away to rejoin her husband, Owen wrapped his arms around Willa from behind. "Have I told you lately that marrying you was the best decision I ever made?" he murmured in her ear. "Not since this morning," Willa teased, but she leaned back against him, feeling utterly content. They danced until late, until Willa's feet hurt and Owen's shirt was damp with sweat. On the ride home under a sky full of stars, Willa thought about that night 8 years ago when Owen had punched Garrett Monroe and asked her to dance. She thought about the terrified girl she had been, convinced she was unworthy of love. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked. "How far we have come, how different everything is. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had just walked past that night, ignored what was happening?" "Sometimes," Willa admitted. "But then I stop wondering because I cannot imagine my life without you, without James and Ruth, without our home." "Me neither." Owen reached over and took her hand. "Best punch I ever threw," Willa laughed. They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence. 2 people who no longer needed words to understand each other. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. James grew tall and strong, fascinated by horses like his father. Ruth proved to have her mother's practical mind and gentle heart. When James was 12 and Ruth was 10, Willa discovered she was pregnant again, a surprise that brought joy and some anxiety. She was 36 now, older than most women were for childbearing. But this pregnancy went smoothly, and she delivered a healthy baby girl they named Clara. Clara had Owen's dark hair and Willa's eyes, and from the moment she was born, she was fearless. By the time she could walk, she was climbing everything in sight, giving her parents gray hairs with her antics. The ranch continued to prosper. Owen's reputation as a horseman spread throughout northern Nevada, and people came from as far away as Reno to buy his horses. Willa had started her lending library, a small collection of books that she loaned out to neighbors for a penny a week. It did not make much money, but it brought her joy to share her love of reading with others. When James turned 18, he announced his intention to study veterinary medicine. It would mean leaving home to attend school in California, but Owen and Willa had been saving for years to give their children opportunities they had never had. They sent him off with pride and considerable nervousness, hoping they had prepared him well enough for the world beyond their small ranch. Ruth, at 16, had become an accomplished seamstress and talked about opening a dress shop in town. Clara, at age 6, wanted to be a cowboy like her father, much to everyone's amusement. On a warm evening in June, Owen and Willa celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. The children had planned a party, inviting neighbors and friends. Sarah and her family came, along with dozens of other people whose lives had intersected with the Everetts over the years. As the party wound down and guests began heading home, Owen and Willa found themselves alone on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains they had crossed so many years ago. 20 years, Willa said. Can you believe it? Best 20 years of my life, Owen replied. He still said things like that after all this time, and he still meant them. Do you remember that night in Carlin, when I asked you to dance? Every detail. I was so afraid. I thought you were playing some kind of cruel joke. I knew the moment I saw you that you were special. I just had to convince you of it. You did more than that. Willa leaned against him. You gave me a life I never dreamed was possible. A home, a family, love. We gave that to each other, Owen corrected. I was just a drifter with no purpose before I met you. You gave me a reason to stop running. We saved each other then. We did. He kissed the top of her head, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. Inside the house, they could hear Clara giggling as Ruth tried to get her ready for bed. Somewhere in California, James was studying to be a veterinarian, pursuing his dreams. Their herd grazed peacefully in the pasture. The house they had built with their own hands stood solid and strong. It was not the life Willa had imagined as a young woman in Carlin, sitting alone at that social and wondering if she would always be invisible. It was so much better. It was real and hard and beautiful, built on love and trust and the courage to take a chance on each other. Tell me again, Willa said softly. Tell me about that night. Owen smiled. He knew what she wanted to hear. It had become a tradition between them, this retelling of their beginning. I walked into that social hall looking for food, he began. And I saw the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, sitting alone with sadness in her eyes. I was not beautiful, Willa interrupted, as she always did. You were to me. You are to me, Owen continued. And then I heard those fools mocking you, and I knew I had to do something. So I punched that bastard right in the face. Best punch you ever threw, Willa quoted his words from years ago. Damn right. And then I asked you to dance, and you looked at me like I had lost my mind, but you said yes. You took a chance on a stranger who had just committed assault on your behalf. You took a bigger chance. You asked me to run away with you after knowing me less than a week. Scariest thing I ever did. But I knew, Willa. I knew you were meant to be mine, and I was meant to be yours. We were both crazy, crazy in love. Owen stood and held out his hand just as he had so many years ago. Dance with me. There was no music, just the sound of crickets and the evening breeze, but Willa took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They waltzed slowly across the porch, their bodies moving in the easy rhythm of two people who had spent 20 years learning each other. Inside, Ruth appeared in the doorway with Clara, who had escaped bedtime duties. Look at Mama and Papa, Clara said. They are dancing. They do that sometimes, Ruth said fondly. She had heard the story of her parents meeting many times. "Come on, let's leave them alone." But Clara wiggled free and ran out onto the porch. "I want to dance too." Owen laughed and scooped her up, spinning her around while she shrieked with delight. Willa watched them, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. This was everything she had ever wanted, everything she never thought she could have. Ruth joined them, and suddenly they were all dancing on the porch in the gathering darkness, the four of them together. Later, when Clara was finally asleep and Ruth had gone to her room, Owen and Willa lay in their bed, hands clasped between them. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had said no that night?" Owen asked. "If you had stayed in Carlin?" Willa thought about it seriously. "I think I would have survived. I am stronger than I gave myself credit for back then. But I would not have lived, not really. I would have been going through the motions, waiting for my life to be over. I am glad you chose to live. I am glad you gave me the choice." She rolled onto her side to face him. "Thank you, Owen, for seeing me when everyone else looked away, for loving me when I did not love myself, for giving me this life. Thank you for trusting me, for taking that leap of faith, for building this life with me." He kissed her gently. "I love you, Willa Everett, today, tomorrow, and for all the days after that. I love you too." They fell asleep holding hands the way they had every night for 20 years. Outside, the Nevada wind whispered through the sagebrush, carrying the scent of dust and possibility. The ranch slept peacefully under a canopy of stars, home to a family that had been built on courage and love, and one cowboy's decision to punch a bully and dance with a girl no one else would look at. The years ahead would bring their share of challenges. James would graduate and return home to practice veterinary medicine in Fernley, eventually taking over the ranch when Owen's back grew too sore for the hard physical labor. Ruth would open her dress shop and marry a kind railroad clerk, giving Willa and Owen 3 more grandchildren. Clara would indeed become a rancher, buying property of her own and raising some of the finest cutting horses in the state. But those were stories for another time. On this night, the 20th anniversary of the day Willa Preston became Willa Everett, all that mattered was the present moment. The warm weight of Owen's hand in hers, the sound of their daughter's soft breathing from the next room, the knowledge that they had built something lasting and good from the broken pieces of their separate pasts. It had started with a punch and a dance, an act of violence and an act of grace. It had grown into a love story that would span decades, producing children and grandchildren who would carry forward the lesson that Willa and Owen had learned that night in Carlin, that true love sees past the surface to the person underneath. That courage is choosing to be vulnerable even when you are afraid. That sometimes the best things in life come from the craziest decisions. And as they slept, the Nevada sky stretched overhead, endless and full of stars, bearing witness to a love that had transformed 2 lonely people into a family. A love that had started with a simple question in a social hall 20 years ago. "Would you do me the honor of a dance?" Willa had said yes, and everything else had followed from that one brave choice. The end.